I want to bring in Congressman Joaquin Castro. He's a Democrat from Texas. He's a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, also a member of the Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Wolf.
Let me get your reaction first to this White House blunder that allowed the White House press secretary, Sean Spicer, to read this assertion, this claim by a Fox News contributor that Britain was actually, British intelligence services were surveying, were monitoring Donald Trump over at Trump Tower during the campaign on the request of President Obama. What's your reaction to that? Because the British government is very upset. The White House has now apologized.
Wolf, it's all just very strange. That came at a press conference which happened right after the Senate intelligence heads, the chairman and the ranking member, made the comment that they basically had seen no evidence of any kind of surveillance or wiretapping, and it seemed to be Sean Spicer and the administration pursuing one more avenue to suggest that President Obama somehow wiretapped or surveilled candidate Trump. And it's not only strange, but it also starts to really damage one of our best relationships with such a long-standing ally in Britain. And then, to hear the White House even now and those who are defending Sean Spicer not be able to admit that they made a mistake, for some of the members of Congress to still defend it is just bizarre.
Yeah, I think the National Security Advisor, General McMaster, admits this was a major blunder on the part of the White House, and it required a strong reaction. Clearly from the British government, they got that, but then the U.S. now apologizing to the British government. As you know, Germany is a very strong intelligence sharing partner of the United States as well. As we go into this joint news conference, are you concerned that all these wiretapping allegations out there could undercut that kind of intelligence cooperation, not only with Britain or Germany or other close allies?
That is a concern. Our allies have to feel like they can trust us, that they have confidence in us, and anytime you make wild allegations like that are unsubstantiated, it starts to undercut the trust that other countries have in the United States.
Have you seen any evidence, and you're a member of the Intelligence Committee, Congressman, that some intelligence services who normally cooperate extremely closely with the U.S. right now are reluctant to provide certain very sensitive information to the U.S. as a result of all of this?
Well, some of this, of course, that's classified, I can't speak to, but it's something that I know that I'm monitoring and other members of the committee are monitoring as well.
What does that mean, you're monitoring? Explain, elaborate a little bit.
Sure. Well, we're trying to gauge to make sure that our relationships around the world with longstanding allies like Germany and Britain are not damaged by some of the rhetoric that's coming out of the White House and some of the new policies that are being put into place. You remember that as a candidate, President Trump was critical not only of Chancellor Merkel, but also of the relationship with NATO and the United States. He was critical of our own intelligence agencies. So all of these things create what can become a hostile environment and really upset the very careful balance in the relationships between the United States and our allies around the world.
Congressman Castro, you're a member of the House Intelligence Committee. You're going to have an open hearing on Monday with the FBI director, the leaders of the U.S. intelligence community. They're going to be discussing all of these allegations. So also Russia's cyber attacks against the U.S. during the presidential election. So what do you expect we will learn from that hearing?
Well, it is an open session, so it's not in a classified setting where more information would come out. But there are a few things I think that I hope that we hear about. First, many of us have been asking a fundamental question, which is whether any Americans cooperated or conspired with the Russians who interfered with the 2016 presidential election. What I would like for the director to discuss in open session is whether anybody is being investigated, whether any Americans are being investigated because of that. And then also, basically, the scope of the investigation. And then finally, a timeline for resolving that question and so many others that have to do with Russian interference in the 2016 election.
But you've seen no hard evidence to corroborate that allegation. General Clapper a couple of weeks ago said he didn't have any evidence that there was any collaboration or any cooperation between Trump campaign officials and Russia in connection with their cyber attacks?
Well, you know, I've commented before that I think there is a gap in terms of what the intelligence agencies know and what the committees have been told. And hopefully we will start to close that gap starting on Monday.
And do you think there are certain officials, Americans, U.S. citizens who were involved in the Trump campaign who are now being investigated by the FBI or other agencies?
Wolf, that's something that I can't say conclusively.
Let's talk about something else you could talk about, because I know you had a chance to meet with the Homeland Security Secretary, John Kelly. Some of your colleagues who spoke afterwards say Kelly was dismissive of their questions, unaware of some immigration policies, and they were left with more questions. What was your takeaway?
That the Secretary basically held the administration's line. For example, he was asked about separating women and children at the border. He said, in fact, that it's not happening now, but it's something that's on the table, and they may pursue it. He was, asked about the civil rights violations that have come up, the flight from San Francisco to New York, for example, where people were asked about their identification, and also other American citizens being detained, Muhammad Ali's son, for example. But he was very defensive of the agency and the organization and their policies. He was also presented evidence. One of the members from California had a big photo blown up of Border Patrol agents staked out at a church in California. He was presented that, and also a letter from a bishop who asked that they not do that. He said that, they don't go to churches. He basically denied that it was happening. And so that's why I think some folks felt like his tone and his approach was dismissive. I hope that the Secretary and the Department will be open to hearing about instances where perhaps their agents are doing things that they shouldn't do. What we want to see out of his office is cooperation, most of all.
I interviewed Secretary Kelly a couple of weeks or so ago, and he defended the decision to go ahead and separate children who cross the borders illegally from their parents, saying this would be a deterrent to convince others not to even try. I assume he made that case to you as well.
He did. He spoke about that. Their point is that they want to do everything to keep people from making that journey. But the fact is, when these women and children do arrive at the border of the United States, to separate these women from their children, quite honestly, is inhumane.
Joaquin Castro, thanks so much for joining us. The Congressman